The big story tonight is a really big story. A few years back, it would have been impossible. But now the impossible is happening. Saudi Arabia and Israel will normalize ties. This is a truce that has been many years in the making. It's being brokered by the US. We've been tracking the meetings and the statements. The signs were very much there. It was more a matter of when. The reports came a few hours back. There's talk of a deal and broad points of convergence. A final agreement is yet to be hammered out, but we are told it is finally happening. Washington and Riyadh have reached an understanding. They have agreed on the key points, the key pillars as they're calling it. Reports say both sides have made big concessions. And this is extremely significant. To understand why, one must first understand their history. Saudi Arabia is an Arab kingdom, the de facto leader of the Muslim world, home to the holiest sites in Islam. Israel is a Jewish state. For the longest time, denied existence by the Muslim world and engaged in multiple wars with its neighbors. So Saudi Arabia and Israel were sworn enemies. The biggest point of contention was Palestine. It's a very complex story, but on a very, very basic level, it's also a fight for land. Palestinians see Israelis as occupiers. Saudi Arabia backs the Palestinian cause. Its troops have fought 2 wars against Israel. But at some point, the sand shifted. Iran became a bigger enemy. The Saudis are a Sunni Muslim kingdom. Iran has Shia majority. They were at loggerheads. Iran and Israel are also enemies. And what's the enemy of your enemy? A potential friend. So Israel and Saudi Arabia began a secret relationship. Now they're making it public, and the matchmaker is America. Under Donald Trump, the US got multiple Arab countries to normalize ties with Israel, and it happened with Saudi Arabia's blessing. They signed what's called the Abraham Accords. In recent months, Washington made another push. There was a series of discussions with Riyadh. The Saudis made some demands. The Americans most likely agreed, which is why they have what they're calling the broad contours of a deal. What are these key pillars? Number 1 is Palestine. Saudi Arabia wants some concessions from Israel on Palestine. Number 2, nuclear reactors. Saudi Arabia wants a civilian nuclear program. The US, we are told, is on board. Number 3, security guarantees. The Saudis want protection from the US. They want America to remain invested in the region, and Washington is apparently willing to discuss it. So those are the key pillars, and this was the first step. Now the process moves to the next stage, which is negotiations. There will be hectic diplomacy. The fine print will be discussed. The specifics will be hammered out. What kind of security guarantees does Riyadh need? What kind of protections will the US provide? And most importantly, what kind of concessions will Israel give to the Palestinians? All of those questions will be answered over the next year. Yes. Reports say the negotiations could take anywhere between 9 to 12 months. Let's now also talk about the concessions that Riyadh is making. The US wants a commitment from the Saudis, a limit on their growing relationship with China. Reports say Washington has asked Riyadh to agree to such limits, to quote-unquote distance itself from Beijing economically and militarily. That's the message from the US to Saudi Arabia. Will they agree, though? And to what extent? Again, it all boils down to the negotiations, but America has shown its hand. It wants to contain China in the region. It has a wish list for the Saudis. No Chinese bases in Saudi Arabia, limits on the use of Chinese technology like Huawei, and no yuan for oil purchases. The US could ask Saudi Arabia to price oil exclusively in the US dollar. And those are some sweeping demands, but that's the price that America could impose on the kingdom. We're given to understand that the Crown Prince is in no hurry to push this through. Reports say Mohammed bin Salman spoke to his advisors, and he has told them that there is no rush. The kingdom wants to see what Israel brings to the table, especially on the issue of Palestine. And that's the big hurdle for this deal, the trickiest part. Israel and its hardline government. Apparently, Riyadh wants to see a gesture from Tel Aviv, something that leads to a future Palestinian state. If not a commitment, at least a good faith gesture, something to secure Palestinian interests. And that's a big ask. Will Prime Minister Netanyahu agree? Is he in a position to agree? Reports say he will not make any significant concessions, but he is willing to offer a modest compromise. He doesn't really have a lot of elbow room here. Netanyahu is tied by the demands and politics of his coalition partners. They won't give him a free hand. And their politics does not allow any concessions for Palestine. So the road ahead is going to be very tough. And yet, The broad deal is a big step, a starting point on the road to normalization. This could change, like I said, the politics and the power equations of West Asia. It would mark the return of America in the game. Each side knows what it wants. The challenge now is to find middle ground.